The small coastal town had never seen anything like the visitors arriving that morning. The sun glimmered off the calm sea as people gathered along the pier, whispering excitedly. At the center of attention was a sleek silver spacecraft, smooth and silent, hovering above the water before it landed gently. Children pressed against the wooden railing, their eyes wide with wonder, and the local fishermen paused, leaving their nets behind. From the spacecraft emerged the alien delegation. At their head was a young princess, tall and poised, with shimmering, iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to change color in the sunlight. Her robes flowed like liquid light, and her steps were measured, careful yet full of confidence. The townspeople watched silently, some bowing slightly, others standing still with a mix of awe and curiosity. Armin Hale stood apart from the crowd. He was a human born and raised in the town, a young engineer known for his quiet skill and steady hands. Today he carried the small invention he had spent months perfecting, a compact device to monitor tides and help secure the fishing equipment during storms. It was nothing fancy, but it had a practical charm, made entirely from scraps and recycled materials. Armin was nervous. He had never spoken in front of such a large, important crowd, let alone in front of an alien princess. The princess, Leora, observed the humans carefully. Her lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile as she scanned the fair. She could see the simplicity of the people, the modesty of their tools, and the wide-eyed excitement. It amused her. She took a step forward and spoke, her voice clear and melodic, carrying easily over the crowd. "You won't last a minute against me, human," she said, her tone sharp, almost teasing. The words hung in the air like a sudden chill. A few of the humans laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke or a challenge. Armin froze for a moment, feeling a mix of embarrassment and surprise. He knew she did not understand him or his world. Dr. Mira Qureshi, the cultural liaison, stepped forward, placing a hand gently on the princess's arm. "Leora, please, let us focus on the demonstration. Everyone is here to learn and share," she said, her voice calm but firm. Leora inclined her head, but the hint of a smirk remained. She turned her gaze back to Armin. Armin took a slow breath. He did not answer immediately. There was no need to shout or argue. Words were cheap. Action, skill, and calm judgment were what mattered. He adjusted the strap of his satchel and stepped forward as a loud clatter came from the far end of the pier. A small crane, old and unsteady, had begun to tilt dangerously. A net full of freshly caught fish teetered on the edge, threatening to spill into the water. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Leora's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing her otherwise controlled expression. Dr. Mira muttered something under her breath. Signaling for calm, Armin moved quickly but not recklessly. He reached the crane, examining it with steady hands, assessing the weight and balance. People stepped back, giving him room. The princess, for the first time, watched silently, her arms crossed but her posture tense. She had expected humans to be slow, awkward, or fearful. She had not expected this quiet competence. With careful movements, Armin tied a secondary rope, adjusted the counterweight, and slowly stabilized the crane. The net of fish swayed gently, but it did not fall. The crowd erupted in relieved applause. Leora tilted her head, studying him more closely. He did not smile or bow. He simply checked the mechanism one last time and nodded to himself, satisfied that it would hold. Dr. Mira stepped up beside the princess. "You see," she said softly, "humans may not look strong, but they know how to handle what matters. Calm hands, steady minds, they can surprise you." Leora's eyes narrowed slightly, but her expression softened just a little. She had underestimated the human standing before her. Armin returned to his small device, carefully unpacking it on a nearby table. "This is just a simple tide monitor," he explained, speaking quietly but clearly so that those nearby could hear. "It can tell us when a storm is coming and help us secure the boats and equipment before it hits. Nothing fancy, just practical." He adjusted a small dial and the device beeped softly, confirming the settings. Leora leaned closer, curiosity replacing a hint of disdain. "Practical," she repeated, testing the word on her tongue. "Humans rely on such small things to control their environment?" She seemed genuinely puzzled, her tone no longer mocking but analytical. "Yes," Armin replied simply. "Small tools, careful planning, and teamwork. That is what keeps us safe." He glanced around at the town, at the fishermen, the children. the neighbors who had gathered to watch. It is not the strength of one person that matters. It is the care of many. The princess paused. For the first time, she considered his words seriously. She had been trained in diplomacy, combat drills, and ceremony. Strength in her world often meant power, display, or control. This human, however, demonstrated a different kind of strength, quiet, steady, unassuming, yet undeniably effective. A small boy approached the table, eyes wide with admiration. "Can it really save our boats?" he asked softly. Armin smiled faintly. "If we work together, yes. It's not magic, just careful observation." The boy nodded seriously, looking at the princess, then back at Armin. Leora's eyes flickered toward the child, a strange warmth softening her usual stern gaze. The sun rose higher, and the crowd began to settle around the tables, eager to see more demonstrations. Dr. Mira guided the princess toward the exhibit area. Leora's posture remained regal, but her curiosity was now piqued. Armin watched her carefully, noting the shift. The challenge she had issued earlier, bold, almost insulting, had not disappeared, but it now had an undercurrent of respect. As the morning continued, small tasks became small competitions. Armand fixed a broken pulley, aligned tide markers, and adjusted nets. Leora attempted to participate, her movements precise but overly cautious, guided by protocol rather than intuition. Each time, Armand offered a quiet word of instruction, pointing out small adjustments, never criticizing, never condescending. Slowly, she began to listen and even mimic without losing her dignity. By noon, the crowd was buzzing with energy. The princess, once so confident in her verbal challenge, had learned something new. The human she had underestimated was not reckless, not weak, not simple. He was capable, observant, and calm in ways she had not imagined. The stage was set for a new kind of test, one that neither she nor the town had expected. A storm warning flashed on the monitors. Clouds gathered on the horizon, and the wind carried a hint of urgency. The challenge was no longer about words. It would be about action, trust, and working together. And in that moment, Armin Hale felt the quiet determination rising in his chest. He did not seek glory, nor recognition, nor to prove a point. He only wanted to do what had to be done. And the alien princess, Leora, was about to discover that she had challenged someone far stronger than she imagined. The sky had begun to darken, and clouds rolled in from the horizon, bringing the first whispers of the storm. The small town buzzed with preparation. Fishermen hurried to secure their boats. Townsfolk stacked sandbags along the pier, and children watched anxiously from safe distance. Armin Hale moved calmly through the crowd, giving quiet instructions, checking ropes and adjusting equipment. Leora, the alien princess, followed closely behind, her robes brushing the wooden planks. She had shed some of her earlier pride, replaced by curiosity and determination. She wanted to understand how humans faced challenges, not just mock them. Her eyes scanned Armin as he worked, noting the careful movements, the attention to detail, and the calm voice he used even under pressure. "Step here," Armand said, pointing to a loose beam that threatened to shift under the weight of stacked nets. Leora obeyed without hesitation. She adjusted the beam as he instructed, awkwardly at first, but with increasing confidence. "You see," he said quietly, "it is not about strength. It is about knowing what to do and doing it carefully. Even the smallest action matters." Leora nodded. The words were simple, but the meaning struck her. In her world, strength often meant the ability to command or overpower. Here, strength was quiet, practical, and alive in every careful movement. Dr. Mira Qureshi, standing nearby, smiled at the growing understanding between the two. "You're learning fast," she said to Leora. "Humans may seem ordinary, but in their simplicity there is a kind of power." Leora's lips curved faintly. She looked at Armin, who had already moved to another task, securing a pulley that would hold several nets in place. The princess decided to try something on her own, without direct instructions. She approached a half-damaged winch and studied it. Her hands were precise, but her technique was guided by ceremony, not experience. The metal groaned under her touch, and she frowned in frustration. Armand noticed immediately. He walked over, calm and steady. "Try loosening this bolt first," he suggested, pointing to a small part. "Then adjust the lever slowly. Don't force it." Leora followed his instructions. Slowly, carefully, she worked the mechanism. The winch clicked into place, the tension easing and the nets held firm. She looked up at him, a spark of admiration in her alien eyes. "I see," she said softly. "It is not the effort that counts. It is the timing, the patience, the care." "Exactly," Armand said, nodding. "Even small mistakes can make a big difference. That is why we move carefully, step by step." The townspeople had stopped their chores briefly to watch the princess work. Whispers ran through the crowd. They had expected her to command, to instruct, to display her royal skill. Instead, she listened, learned, and followed. The scene was unfamiliar but inspiring. The first drops of rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier. The wind picked up, sending gusts across the pier. Armand moved to the central tide monitor, adjusting it quickly while giving short, clear instructions to those nearby. Leora stayed close, observing every move. "You humans have to work fast when the storm comes," she said, her voice steady despite the rain. "There is no time to waste." "Yes," Armand replied. "And you have to remain calm. Panic never helps. You plan, you act, you help others, and you keep your head clear." Leora's mind worked quickly. Her royal training had focused on command, diplomacy, and knowledge, but here was a lesson in patience, observation, and careful action. She felt a quiet admiration for this human who seemed so ordinary, yet so capable. As the rain grew heavier, Armand and Leora moved to secure a large fishing boat that threatened to drift from its moorings. Armand handed Leora a rope. "Tie it here," he said. "Pull slowly, don't rush." The princess followed his instructions, adjusting her grip, letting the rope slide carefully through her hands. Armand guided her silently, showing by example how to knot it and secure the boat. Together they worked efficiently. The boat, once at risk, now rested firmly in place. Dr. Mira and Captain Javid, who had been coordinating safety from a distance, exchanged glances. "She's learning faster than I expected," Dr. Mira said. "Yes," Captain Javid replied, "but it is more than learning technique. She is learning respect, for skill, for care, for calm action." The storm intensified, rain lashing the pier, wind howling through the buildings. Armand and Leora worked side by side, moving equipment, adjusting ropes, and checking safety lines. There was no time for pride, only action, and in that action, a quiet bond began to form. "You humans are very different from what I imagined," Leora said, her voice almost drowned by the wind. "I thought you were weak, unprepared, simple." Armand smiled faintly. "We may seem ordinary, but we have learned to adapt. We work with what we have, care for each other, and prepare for what might come. That is our strength." The princess paused, considering his words. She had been so sure of her own superiority, yet here she was, learning from someone she had underestimated. For the first time she felt humility, and it was not uncomfortable. It was enlightening. The storm raged around them, but the town's work continued. Nets were secured, boats tied, and equipment reinforced. Every small action mattered, and Armand moved among the people calmly, guiding, advising, and encouraging. Leora followed, learning not just techniques, but the rhythm of human cooperation, the quiet strength of shared purpose. By evening, the storm began to abate. The clouds broke slightly, revealing streaks of golden light over the sea. The town had weathered the storm with minimal damage, thanks to the careful work of humans and the unexpected help of the princess. Leora stood beside Armand, soaked but steady, her robes clinging to her frame. She looked at the human who had quietly guided the efforts. Her earlier pride transformed into respect. "You were right," she said softly. "It is not the strength of one that matters, but the care and skill of many." Armand nodded, glancing at the recovering town. "Yes, and everyone has a role. Even the smallest action can save a lot if it is done carefully." The townspeople began to gather around them, clapping and cheering. The princess raised her hand slightly, acknowledging the crowd, and for the first time, she spoke in a voice free of challenge or pride. "Today I have learned something valuable. Humans are capable in ways I did not understand." Armand gave a quiet smile, glancing at her. "And we learn from each other," he said. The crowd murmured, impressed by the cooperation, the calmness, and the teamwork displayed. For the alien princess, the lesson was more personal. She had challenged a human, expecting arrogance or weakness. Instead, she had found patience, skill, and quiet courage. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the pier, Leora stood beside Armand, Watching the town's lights reflect on the wet wood, the storm had passed, but something had changed between them. Mutual respect had begun, small but real, and it would grow. Dr. Mira approached, holding a clipboard damp from the rain. "Tomorrow we continue with more practical tests," she said with a smile. "It will be another opportunity to learn from each other." Leora nodded, her eyes lingering on Armin. "I am ready," she said simply. There was no trace of mockery, only a quiet determination. She understood now that challenges were not won by words but by action, care and understanding. And Armin, standing beside her, felt a quiet pride. Not the pride of victory over words, but the pride of having guided, helped, and shown that true strength was often quiet, steady, and persistent. The night fell, bringing calm after the storm. Both human and alien looked toward the horizon, knowing the real tests were not over, and that their unexpected partnership was only beginning. The morning after the storm, the town was quiet but tense. The air smelled of wet wood and salt, and the clouds hung low over the horizon, dark and heavy. The storm from the day before had been only a warning of what was coming. Armin Hale moved along the pier, checking the equipment again. The tide was rising and the wind was picking up. Something larger was approaching, something that would test more than just tools and planning. Leora, the alien princess, had dressed simply for the day, leaving her flowing robes behind. She moved beside Armin, her expression serious. The lesson from yesterday had stayed with her. Humans were different than she expected, and quiet skill could be stronger than prideful display. Dr. Mira and Captain Javed had gathered a small team. "We need everyone ready," Dr. Mira said. "This storm could be worse. Safety first, but efficiency is key." Armin nodded, moving to secure a series of pulleys and ropes along the docks. "We work together step by step. No rushing. That is how we handle strong conditions," he instructed calmly. Leora followed closely, assisting where she could. The wind began to howl, stronger than before. Waves slapped against the pier, sending splashes over the boards. A small boat tilted dangerously as a rope came loose. The crowd of townspeople and helpers stepped back, watching anxiously. "You humans really face this often?" Leora asked, gripping a rope to steady herself. Her voice carried over the wind, but it was more curious than mocking. "Yes," Armin replied. "We prepare as best we can. Storms are part of life. We cannot control everything, but we can control how we respond." The first serious challenge appeared quickly. A large crate filled with fishing nets and equipment had slipped from its place. It swung toward the edge of the pier, threatening to fall into the water. Armin moved swiftly, instructing Leora to hold a safety line while he grabbed another. Together they stabilized the crate, securing it with careful knots. "Step back," Armin called. "One at a time." "We must coordinate," Leora obeyed. She followed the rhythm of his voice, listening to his instructions. Her previous pride had been replaced by concentration. She realized now that real strength came from trust and cooperation, not from commands or sharp words. The storm intensified. Rain fell in sheets, wind tearing across the pier. Armin and Leora moved together from task to task, securing ropes, reinforcing boats, and checking lines. Each action was small, precise, and meaningful. The townspeople, inspired, began helping under their guidance, forming a chain of careful, purposeful work. A sudden gust nearly tore a tarp from its anchor. Leora lunged forward to grab it, but she slipped on the wet wood. Armin caught her arm, steadying her before she fell. For the first time, the princess felt the unpredictability of human work, the real danger that came with nature itself. She inhaled sharply but remained focused. "You must adjust with the wind," Armin instructed. "Don't fight it. Use it to guide your movements." She nodded, following his guidance. Slowly, she began to move in rhythm with the gusts, securing the tarp and reinforcing it against the storm. The lesson was practical, immediate, and unforgettable. She realized that instructions alone were not enough. She had to feel the situation, respond with calm skill, and trust the human beside her. Dr. Mira and Captain Javed watched from a safer distance. "She is learning faster than I expected," Dr. Mira said, a faint smile on her face. "Yes," Javed replied, "but it is more than learning technique. She is learning how humans think, act, and survive. That is the real lesson." The central tide monitor began beeping loudly, signaling a sudden rise in water. Armin glanced at it quickly. "The water is coming in faster than predicted. We need to secure the larger vessels immediately," he shouted over the wind. Leora's eyes widened slightly. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice steady but urgent. "Help me with the ropes here," Armin said. "Pull slowly, coordinate with the lines on the far side." One step at a time, they worked together side by side, their movements synchronized. Leora's initial awkwardness faded as she followed Armin's calm instructions. Step by step, they guided the large boat to safety, securing it firmly against the rising tide. The townspeople watched in awe, seeing the princess act not with arrogance but with understanding and focus. A sudden shout came from the edge of the pier. A small crate had slipped toward the water, caught only by a single rope. Leora moved without hesitation, guided by Armin's instructions. She grabbed the rope, held firm, and adjusted the tension as he had taught her. Together they saved the crate from falling. The moment passed, but it left an impression on the crowd, on the princess, and on the human beside her. For the first time, Leora spoke not as a princess issuing commands, but as a participant. "I understand now," she said, her voice carrying over the wind. "Strength is not always power. It is control, focus, and care. Each action matters." Armin nodded, glancing around at the town. "Exactly. And when everyone works together, we can handle much more than any one person could alone." The storm began to subside slowly. Rain still fell, but the wind softened. The sun broke through the clouds in places, casting long streaks of light across the wet pier. Boats were secured, crates were tied down, and the town had weathered the challenge with minimal damage. The townspeople gathered around, clapping and cheering for the humans who had led them. Leora stood beside Armin, her robe soaked, hair plastered to her head, but her posture proud and calm. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting admiration. "You were right yesterday," she said softly. "I underestimated humans. I thought words and pride made strength. But action, patience, and careful planning, that is real strength." Armin gave a small, quiet smile. "And everyone has a part. Even the smallest action can save much if it is done with care." Leora considered this in silence. The challenge she had issued with words had turned into a real experience, one that taught her humility, respect, and the value of teamwork. She realized that she had not lost anything by learning from a human. Instead, she had gained something more valuable: understanding. Dr. Mira stepped forward, holding a damp clipboard. "Tomorrow we will continue," she said. "There are more practical tasks, more lessons to learn. But for today you have done well." Leora nodded, her eyes meeting Armin's briefly. "I am ready," she said. There was no trace of her earlier mockery. Instead, there was quiet determination and a growing respect for the human who had guided her. Armin looked at the recovering town, at the people quietly resuming their work, and at the sky clearing above. "We do not need to rush," he said. "We just need to keep moving carefully together." The sun set behind them, painting the wet pier with streaks of gold and silver. For the first time, Leora felt a real connection with this world and the humans who lived in it. She had challenged a human expecting pride and weakness. Instead, she had discovered patience, skill, and quiet courage. And for Armin, the day had proven something quietly powerful. That respect was earned not by words or status, but by steady, careful action, by calm decisions under pressure, and by helping others when it truly mattered. As the night settled, the town prepared for whatever came next, knowing that humans and aliens working together could face challenges far greater than any one individual, and in the quiet understanding between them a bond had begun, subtle, strong, and full of promise for the days to come. The day after the storm, the town had returned to its usual rhythm, but the air carried a quiet tension. News of the storm and the efforts to save the pier and boats had spread quickly, reaching the local media and even some distant news channels. Photographs of Leora, the alien princess working alongside Armin Hale, appeared everywhere, capturing the moment she had set aside pride to act with focus and care. Leora walked through the town, observing the repairs and the people. Her steps were steady, though her mind was busy. In her world, showing vulnerability could be seen as weakness, yet here she had learned that strength often meant cooperation, patience, and humility. She thought about the human beside her, Armin, who had guided her with quiet confidence rather than words or demands. His actions had taught her more than any lesson in her royal education. Meanwhile, Armin moved along the pier, checking each line and pulley to ensure everything was still secure. Even after the storm had passed, he remained attentive. His calm presence had inspired the townspeople, and now as the sun rose higher, he noticed their cautious smiles and nods of respect. "Arman," a local fisherman called. "That device of yours, it really saved our boats. Everyone's talking about it." Arman nodded politely, brushing rainwater from his sleeve. "It wasn't just the device," he said simply. "It was everyone working together. That is what makes the difference." Leora approached, watching him speak to the townspeople. She felt a strange warmth inside, a mix of admiration and curiosity. She realized that the words she had spoken the day before, the ones meant to provoke, now seemed hollow. Action, not words, carried true meaning. "You humans," Leora began, pausing to find the right words. "You understand more than I expected. Strength is more than pride. It is care, patience, and cooperation." Armin looked at her, acknowledging her words with a small nod. "Exactly, and anyone can show it no matter where they come from." The moment was interrupted by Dr. Mira, who held a damp notebook filled with notes from the previous day. "We need to plan the public debrief," she said. "The press and officials will want statements. Leora, your actions yesterday have attracted attention. Some may misinterpret them. It is time to prepare." Leora frowned slightly. In her world, misinterpretation could bring trouble, even criticism from her court. Yet she now understood that honesty and integrity mattered more than appearances. "I will speak the truth," she said. "I will explain what I have learned, not what others expect me to say." Armin offered a reassuring smile. "Then speak from your experience, not your title. That is the only way it will matter." The debrief began at the town hall, a simple building with windows fogged by rain. Reporters lined the room, cameras clicking and microphones held forward. Town officials took seats, eager to hear the princess's account. Leora stepped forward, standing beside Arman, who remained calm and steady. She cleared her throat. "Yesterday," she began, her voice clear, "we faced a storm. I thought strength came from command and pride. I was wrong. Humans, even those who seem ordinary, have strength in patience, care, and teamwork. I have learned from them. I have learned from one human in particular, Armin Hale, who guided not with words, but with action and calm." The room fell silent, absorbing her words. This was not the speech anyone expected. The princess had admitted a personal lesson, acknowledged human skill, and given credit to someone she had previously underestimated. It was bold, honest, and unusual. Armin felt a subtle warmth at her words. He had never sought recognition, yet hearing her speak in this way affirmed something he already believed, that actions, not status or speech, earned respect. After the debrief, officials and reporters approached them, asking questions. Some were curious, some skeptical. "Does this change your view of humans?" one asked Leora. "Yes," she replied simply. "They are capable, careful, and strong in ways that do not always show at first glance. I have learned a great deal from them." Outside, the townspeople gathered, watching the press and officials move about. Many nodded at Armin. Some whispered words of thanks. He remained modest, acknowledging only with gestures and small smiles. Leora watched him, realizing that true humility was also a form of strength. Later, in a quieter corner of the town, Leora and Armin walked along the pier. The morning storm had left puddles on the wood and a crisp scent of sea in the air. Leora looked at him, considering what she had witnessed and what she had learned. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly, "for my words before. I did not understand you or humans. I challenged you without knowing. It was wrong." Armin shook his head gently. "There is no need for apologies. You learned something, and that is what matters. Respect is earned, not demanded." They walked in silence for a moment, listening to the soft lap of waves against the pier. The storm had tested them, but it had also revealed new understanding and mutual respect. Leora had begun to see that strength and wisdom were often quiet, subtle, and present in those who acted carefully and thoughtfully. Dr. Mira approached carrying a dry towel. "We have a situation," she said. "A message has arrived from Leora's court. They are questioning the photographs and reports. They want her to return immediately and explain why she appeared vulnerable. There could be political consequences." Leora's eyes narrowed slightly, but her expression remained calm. She had learned something important yesterday and today, that her actions mattered more than appearances. "I will respond truthfully," she said. "I will explain what I have seen and learned. That is the only way forward." Armin glanced at her. "Then you are making the right choice. Honesty is always stronger than pretending. You do not need to hide what you have learned." The two of them returned to the pier, standing side by side. Waves still crashed softly, the air heavy with the scent of rain and salt. Leora looked out over the water, thinking about the storm, the teamwork, and the trust she had found in someone she once underestimated. "You have taught me more than I expected," she said quietly. "Not just about humans, but about myself. About humility, patience, and cooperation." Armin smiled faintly. "And you have reminded us all that learning is ongoing. We never know everything, and we can always learn from others, no matter their world." The townspeople began returning to their work, inspired by the example they had witnessed. Even the smallest actions mattered, and the cooperation between human and alien had left a lasting impression. Leora and Armin walked together, quietly planning for the challenges ahead. Later that evening, the sun dipped low, casting golden streaks across the water. The town had recovered, but the lessons of the storm remained. Leora stood beside Armin, realizing that the true measure of strength was not how loud or bold one could be, but how calm, careful, and steady one acted in the face of challenges. And for Armin, the day had proven again that respect was earned through quiet courage, thoughtful action, and the willingness to help others. Both human and alien had grown, learned, and begun to trust each other, forming a bond that was subtle, real, and strong. As night fell, Leora looked toward the distant horizon. The message from her court awaited, but she was no longer the same. She had faced real challenges, learned from someone she once underestimated, and discovered that strength came in many forms. Armin watched the pier's lights reflecting on the calm water. He knew the journey was far from over, but the understanding between them had begun. Respect, trust, and careful action would guide them through the challenges yet to come, and both human and alien were ready to face them together. The morning sun rose over the small coastal town, casting a soft golden glow over the pier. The air was crisp and the sea shimmered with gentle waves. Though the storm had passed days ago, the memory lingered. The fear, the struggle, the quiet courage that had carried everyone through. Leora, the alien princess, stood at the edge of the pier, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Her thoughts were far from the calm waters. A message had arrived from her court overnight. Officials demanded her immediate return, concerned about the photographs and reports showing her participating in human work. Some suggested she had acted inappropriately, appearing vulnerable rather than regal. Leora knew she could follow orders and leave, but she also knew the lessons she had learned were too important to abandon. Armin Hale joined her silently, carrying a small toolkit and a notebook. He had been checking the pier and equipment again, making sure everything remained secure. Though he had no interest in glory, he felt the weight of responsibility for the town, and for the alien princess who had learned alongside him. "You are thinking of leaving," Armin said quietly, reading her expression. Leora nodded. "Yes, my court expects me to return immediately. They will demand explanations, and some may not approve of my actions. I could leave and follow their orders easily." Armin looked out at the water, his calm presence steady. "But will that honor what you have learned? Will it show the truth of your experience or only what others expect?" She considered his words carefully. He was right. Leaving now would be safe and expected, but it would also erase the lessons, the understanding, and the trust she had built. Leora turned to him, a determined gleam in her eyes. "Then I will stay," she said simply. "I will speak honestly. I will show that strength is not pride but action, care and cooperation. Dr. Mira and Captain Javid arrived shortly, having prepared for this moment. If you speak honestly, it will be a risk, Dr. Mira warned. Some will question you. Some may see it as weakness, but it is the only way to make the truth matter. Leora took a deep breath. I understand. I am ready. The town hall was filled once again, reporters and officials eager to hear her statements. The air was thick with anticipation. Leora stood beside Arman, no longer the mocking, proud figure she had been days ago, but a focused and thoughtful leader who had faced real challenges. She began speaking, her voice clear and steady. I have come here not to command or to show superiority. I have come to learn. Yesterday we faced a storm together. I thought strength came from pride, from rank, or from words. I was wrong. Humans, even those who seem ordinary, have strength in patience, care, and cooperation. They act not for glory, but for the well-being of others. I have learned from them and from one human in particular, Arman Hale, who guided us with calm, careful action. The room fell silent, absorbing her words. She had admitted vulnerability, but also knowledge, and she had given credit where it was due. The message was clear. True strength came not from appearances, but from action, understanding, and care. A reporter asked, Princess Leora, do you think humans are capable leaders? Yes, she replied simply. They are capable in ways that are quiet, steady, and persistent. Their strength is not always seen at first, but it matters deeply. Another official asked, and your actions? How will your court respond? Honesty is stronger than appearances, Leora said. I cannot change what others may think, but I can act with integrity. That is what matters. Outside the hall, the townspeople had gathered, hearing bits of the statements. They clapped and cheered quietly, impressed by the princess's honesty and courage. Arman gave a small nod, acknowledging their respect, though he remained humble. Later, away from the cameras, Leora and Arman walked along the pier. The sea reflected the sunlight in soft patterns, and the town slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm. You have changed, Arman said, glancing at her. Not in who you are, but in what you understand. Leora smiled faintly. And you have taught me that real strength is not shown in words or ceremony, but in action and care. I came thinking I would show power, but I learned humility instead. Arman nodded. And the lesson matters. Not just for you, but for all of us. We learn from each other, no matter our world, our background, or our abilities. The princess looked out at the horizon, thinking about her court, her people, and the expectations that awaited her return. She understood that some would disapprove of her honesty, but she also knew that integrity was worth more than approval. Tomorrow I will respond to my court, she said. I will tell them the truth of what I have seen and learned. I will not hide it. I will not pretend. That is my choice. Arman gave a quiet smile, and that is the right choice. They may not understand at first, but they will see the value in time. Truth and action are stronger than appearances. The townspeople began resuming their work on the pier, inspired by the lessons of the past days. Even the smallest actions, tying a rope, securing a boat, offering a hand to another, carried significance. Leora watched quietly, realizing that these small acts were what truly held communities together. As the day passed, she and Arman continued walking, checking equipment and talking quietly. Their bond had grown not from words or challenges, but from shared experience, trust, and understanding. You have changed my view of your world, Leora said softly. And you have changed mine, Arman nodded. And that is how learning works. We grow when we face challenges together, when we act carefully, and when we respect each other. The sun began to set, casting golden reflections across the calm waters. The storm had passed, the challenges had been met, and both human and alien had emerged stronger, wiser, and more understanding. I will carry this lesson home, Leora said, and I will continue to learn. But I will never forget what you taught me. Arman smiled faintly. And I will remember what you taught me too, that even someone from a different world can surprise you, can teach you, and can show strength in unexpected ways. The night settled over the town, quiet and peaceful. The pier reflected the stars above, and the gentle waves whispered against the wood. Leora and Arman stood side by side, not as challenger and opponent, but as equals who had faced trials, learned from each other, and discovered the value of respect, care, and patience. In that quiet moment, both understood something profound. Real strength was not about power or pride, but about action, understanding, and integrity. It was the small choices, the steady hands, and the willingness to learn that made the difference. And though Leora would return to her court and Armin to his simple life, the bond they had formed, the lessons they had shared, and the mutual respect they had earned would remain, subtle, enduring, and quietly powerful. The horizon glowed faintly with the last light of the day. Leora breathed in the salty air, feeling a connection not just to this world, but to its people, and to the human who had taught her the quiet strength that words could never show. Armin watched the water, feeling the calm of completion, knowing that what they had learned together would guide them both through whatever came next. The challenge had ended, but the lessons would last a lifetime. And for both of them, the understanding was clear. True strength comes from patience, respect, careful action, and the courage to learn from one another. That was the bond that neither storm, distance, nor expectation could ever break.